No Red October, no hammer and sickle, no Cold War, just the embers of a dying empire, and a revolution that never catches fire. It's 1917. Russia teeters on the edge. The Tsar is gone. The streets of Petrograd boil with unrest. But in this version of history, the Bolsheviks don't win. There is no Lenin leading a revolution, no Soviet Union rising from the ruins of empire. So what happens next? Act 1. The revolution that wasn't. In our timeline, the Russian Civil War 1917-1922 ended with a red victory. But in this alternate world, the whites prevail. A fragile alliance of monarchists, liberals, and moderate socialists keeps the Bolsheviks from seizing power. Lenin dies in exile. Stalin never rises. Trotsky fades into obscurity. The Russian Empire doesn't return, but neither does communism. Instead, a constitutional republic, chaotic, unstable, and deeply flawed, takes hold. Think Weimar Germany, but frostbitten and paranoid. The country limps into the 1920s, battered by war, famine, and internal divisions. The Tsar is dead, but his ghost haunts every institution. And yet there is no Soviet Union, no red flags waving over Moscow, no gulags, no 5-year plans, no collectivization, but also no rapid industrialization, no superpower status, just a fractured, impoverished giant trying not to fall apart. Act 2. The 20th century, unshackled. Without the USSR, the entire balance of global power shifts. Germany, for one, never faces a communist boogeyman to the east. Hitler's rise may still occur, driven by resentment and economic collapse, but without a red menace to rally against, his anti-communist rhetoric loses steam. The Nazis still invade Poland, but perhaps not Russia, or if they do, they face a weak, decentralized state, not a unified Soviet war machine. World War II still happens, but it ends differently. Maybe Germany lasts longer. Maybe Japan never fears Soviet involvement and holds on to Manchuria. Maybe the Allied powers, without Stalin's armies to absorb Hitler's onslaught, are forced to invade Europe sooner, at a higher cost. And when the war ends, there is no Cold War, no Iron Curtain, no Berlin Wall, no nuclear arms race, no space race, no proxy wars in Vietnam or Afghanistan. Washington doesn't fear communism spreading like wildfire, because there's no ideological firestorm to begin with. The US becomes the world's lone superpower, by default, not by struggle. NATO may still form, but the Warsaw Pact never does. Eastern Europe remains a patchwork of monarchies, republics, or fascist remnants, never drawn into a Soviet orbit. Act 3. A different Red Scare. But communism doesn't vanish. It survives in books, cafes, fringe parties. Marx is still revolutions still spark. Cuba, China, perhaps even France or Italy flirt with socialism, but without a powerful Soviet Union to fund, arm and legitimize them, most of these movements burn out or stay local. The allure of global proletarian revolution fades without a state to champion it. Meanwhile, Russia, poor, chaotic, and still vast splinters. Ukraine becomes independent decades earlier. The Caucasus erupts into competing republics. Central Asia turns inward or aligns with neighboring powers like Turkey, Iran, or China. By the 1960s, Russia might resemble a balkanized patchwork of former imperial provinces, not a unified colossus. And what of technology? There's no Sputnik, no Gagarin, no Soyuz. NASA may still put a man on the moon, but not to beat the Soviet. Innovation becomes less of a global race, and more of a steady march. The psychological urgency of the Cold War fades, and with it perhaps, the pace of scientific breakthroughs. Act 4. The world without the bear. America without a rival becomes something else entirely. More confident or more careless? Does it still intervene in Korea, in Vietnam, in the Middle East, or does it turn inward, unchallenged? The global order changes, but not always for the better. Without the bipolar structure of US versus USSR, regional powers rise unchecked. China may still become communist, but now, it leads the ideological charge alone. The non-aligned movement never forms. Africa and Latin America struggle without aid, Soviet or otherwise. And today, there's no Putin longing for Soviet greatness, because there was no Soviet Union to meet, no NATO expansion to counter Russian aggression, because Russia never recovered. Eastern Europe becomes a battleground, not of tanks and treaties, but of ideas and identity. And the question of what Russia could have been still haunts the world, because when a revolution fails, it doesn't just change the fate of a nation, it rewrites the architecture of the century. No Soviet Union, no Cold War, just the ghost of a superpower that never was.